The whole channel needs to be open for source to flow through. You're the equilibrium. Source is the code, the source code that's flowing around it. What if I told you that quantum leaping and manifestation is supposed to be easy and effortless? And that the only difference between your current reality and the one that you want to manifest simply comes down to your state of being, your vibration. And if you learn to apply and master the concepts that I'll be sharing with you today, you won't have to work hard and hustle to get what you want in this reality. It will just flow naturally. It'll just flow through you. But you have to be in the correct magnetic state in order to make that change. Your state of being is determined by a few things. I want to share with you what has allowed me to crack this code of my own limitation. For the longest time, I thought that manifesting was hard, and getting things in this reality required me to hustle and break my back in the process. But I want to show you why that's not the case, and how I've been able to manifest my dream life in such a short amount of time with minimal effort really required. But first we need to understand these concepts because they lay the foundation for any real shift. At the core fundamental level, everything in this universe is made of energy, right? We all started from a place of potential energy. Everything did. And when it's in that state, it's already inherently whole and complete. It doesn't have a gender or duality or good or bad. It just simply is. No contrast. Just pure, infinite oneness. So think of a sea of infinite potential where all existence starts as a spark. This is the quantum field. We also often call it source or God or the universe, the divine. Really, it's all the same thing. And this source energy, which you are a part of, wants to experience itself. So it separates into two counterparts that are different from each other. They're separate, but they're part of the same whole. And these counterparts complete each other. And that's why when we incarnate into these bodies, we experience a dualistic version of the truth of this reality, which is a non-dual nature. These forces of creation are larger than we could ever imagine. And we're only seeing like 0.0035% of that entirety of what's truly there. That's less than 1% of reality that we're perceiving. So there's a lot more going on than just what meets the eyes. And in the different planes of existence, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But first, let's think about what happens when something is created and enters this plane of existence that we call the 3D material world. What's actually taking place on an energetic level, and why is creation happening in the first place? And then we can use that to learn how to tap into that same creative life force energy to create your reality. Because we are these gods of creation on this earth, and our bodies are designed to influence the matter around us, which is nothing more than just particles condensing into a certain frequency that forms the different states of matter. And what we're perceiving is just light or photons refracting off of that so-called matter, and it's creating an image of what we're perceiving. But remember, it's only less than 1% of what's really there. So why does it seem like all of our circumstances are happening to us and that we have no control over them? Well, to answer that question, we need to understand something much deeper. And at its core, understanding this will completely change the way that you see reality, and thus how you create your reality. Think about it. All of creation requires two counterparts to come back together in union, right? There's always going to be the masculine archetype and the feminine archetype, which equals creation. You see this everywhere, whether you zoom in or zoom out. As above, so below, right? Law of correspondence. Everything is existing in the same state, just different expressions of that. So atoms, right? You have positive and negative. You need both of those in order to actually create matter. And all matter has an equal and opposite composition of antimatter. So like all the material things that we have, those atoms have an identical, equal, but opposite expression, which is antimatter. So anyways, that's not the point of this video, but why is this the case? The point I'm trying to make here is that the feminine energy is the creative life force that gives the essence of flow. It gives the creation itself. This is the pervading, the formless, cosmic potential energy that exists. It's spiraling, it's chaotic, right? But the masculine energy is the container that allows that to be expressed in a safe way. So it holds the form, the structure, and the order, preventing the feminine from wreaking chaos and destroying everything. Because the feminine energy is destruction inherently. So you need both of them to come together in order to create anything in this world. Which brings me to my next point. Destruction and creation and how there's no escape. Within this process of creation exists the inevitability of destruction. In order to create something, you need to destroy something to make it, right? But what do we know about energy? It cannot be created nor destroyed. The law of conservation of energy. It can only be transferred from one state to another. So what's really happening is just a reorganization of energy from one form into another. And how does that take place? Through the union of the two opposite polar sides. The masculine and feminine come together to create. Think about how compost is made from food scraps, which are like trash in our eyes. But then they go into the soil, they become the nourishment for the new plants. So the destruction of what once was into the birth of what will be. That's everywhere. The way that our body produces proteins to build its structure based on the foods that we eat. So again, what once was gets transformed and transmuted into something new. And we're all doing this all the time. Everything is doing this. Every system breaks down one form of energy and then converts it into another form of energy that it can use. This is the process of creation, and we can't skip this process. And that process doesn't just happen in a physical sense, because we exist in 3 different planes of reality, like I mentioned before. And this process happens in all aspects of it. But in order to access this process of creation, you need coherence between all the different parts of yourself. Each of these bodies contain both feminine and masculine energies. We have 3 different levels, kind of layers to this experience. Most of us are just familiar with the physical body, right? That's like the meat suit that we're in. But within our bodies, we have both masculine and feminine energies. And within each of the 3 layers of our bodies. Think about the body itself, the form, that's the masculine aspect of our physical bodies. But then what is the pulse that keeps that alive? That's the feminine counterpart, which is creating the system and allowing us to exist. That pulse is the source code, the creation itself. It's flowing from source. And it's creating the life force that we can embody through our masculine material bodies, right? Remember I said the masculine is the container that holds the feminine. So together they create union. That's everywhere. Then we have our mental body, which is the mind or the ego. So that's also separated into 2 subsets of masculine and feminine. We have the left hemisphere of the brain, which corresponds with our intuitive, our feminine aspects of our personality, right? It's the lunar, the internal world. Whereas we have the right side, the logical, thinking, the masculine part of our brain. So both of those work in tandem. You have your creativity and you have your logic, and both of them help you to decipher reality. And then you have your spiritual body, which remember, I said it already exists in a state of oneness. So it already has within it that masculine and feminine energy united. So it's all starting here from the crown. It's coming down through the body into the mind as we perceive it. We have that duality as well. And then we have the body duality as well. We live in a dual experience, but the purpose of living here in this dual experience is so that we can go back and remember that we are inherently, by nature, ourselves non-dual. We are part of that higher self. In Hinduism, they call this Brahman versus Atman. So Brahman is the supreme self. A lot of people call it the higher self. I'm sure you've heard that term if you've been in this world. And then Atman is the observer, the individual unit of that self. But the purpose of creating that separation is so that we can go back and remember, have an experience of separation to say, aha, I remember, and then return to the source. And that's fueling the karmic life cycle of our soul's journey through the light, from a slow frequency to the highest possible vibration and circulating. Everything is just a big circle. What happens to these bodies when they are incoherent? Because each of these planes of existence, they resonate at a certain frequency and they make up the being, your state of being. They make up how you're resonating in terms of your frequency and your magnetic state. So when we incarnate into these bodies, we start forming an ego. And that ego lives in the mental world, in the mental plane. And from the moment we start interacting with our environment, this ego starts building an identity around what's safe, what's not safe, who am I, what is separate from me. So it starts to look at all the information in front of it, and it acts as a protector to keep the physical body from danger. And it's influenced by those external circumstances. So whatever we're born into is what's going to create the first layer of that ego. And usually this includes a lot of core wounds that are part of our soul's evolutionary path to release those wounds and break those generational curses. Because what are we, right? We're the continuation of our parents who birthed us. We have their DNA structure, which is coded with the history of their ancestors all the way up to the first moment of creation. And we are the catalyst that keeps that energy flowing and growing and expanding. At least that's the goal, right? This is the way that we perceive the world and the mental body through the ego. So the ego is not the enemy. It's simply the culmination of all of your past experiences that form our lens through which we see and interpret the world. So think of each of these bodies as like different stages in the process of creation. So the first stage is in infinite potential, in the spiritual realm. It exists everywhere, all at once, right? Where it's inherently whole and complete. The second stage is it comes in as a thought or an idea, and then it comes into our awareness, and we get to choose if we want to express that. And certain ideas or thoughts resonate more than others because we all have our own coded experience, our own karma, our own reason and purpose for incarnating here, for the work that we're continuing. The final stage is physical, right? Physical form. And we're influencing matter not by magic, but by using all of these different parts of the body to transmute energy from one state into another, using the masculine and feminine to transfer frequency from one state, reorganize those atoms and particles and material through all different planes of existence. That's the key. It needs to be simultaneously through all three planes. Think about if you're like sitting in a crowded room, and there's like chatter everywhere, and if you close your eyes, you can start to hear all the different frequencies that are chattering everywhere. You can't see them, but you can hear them. If you tune into one of those frequencies, you can almost like only hear that frequency. And you can maybe start to make out what that person's saying while everything else starts to fade away. What you're doing is moving through the mental plane. So you're moving through the different frequencies of sound that we can't see with our eyes, but we can hear and we can access within our mental realm. Same way that our bodies can access all the areas of the physical realm. The body can move around and access, and the eyes help us to see it. We're able to touch and move. The same thing happens, but in the other realms. So instead of just focusing so much on the physical, on just creating things with physical touch and force, we need to think about the actual creation process. When we're moving and we're interacting particles and waveforms, we're accessing spaces beyond just what we see when we do that. We're using that body to move through a different plane. And that access gives us direct ability to pull potential energy from the quantum field and reorganize it into a material experience. The fact is, we're doing that every day right now, and we're just affirming the life that we're already in. So it brings me to the real question: what happens when we're not coherent between these parts of ourself? Well, it creates a fragmented self. So a part of you that gets cast away and buried beneath the surface. And this part of you is your true self. It's who you're meant to be in this lifetime. But you were told that that's not real, right? Our society tells us to just go to school, get a good degree that pays you well, and everything will work out, and just hope that everything works out. Get yourself a good job and work till you're retired, right? This is the belief that we think our world is created this way. And that's the Matrix program, which could be a whole separate video if you'd like. So we're taught that getting the things that we want requires hard work, right? Grinding. That money doesn't grow on trees. These are the things that we hear as a child. They form our identity of what we think is real. And so we keep affirming that every day when we're pulling energy from the quantum field, because energy exists up there as full potential. All the good things, all the bad things, whatever, it's all existing. Your old version is existing there, your new version is existing there, all of the potential, good, bad, it's there. So you get to choose what you pull down and affirm as reality. And our ego, unfortunately, has been trained to run the show, to not listen to the insight of our higher self, of our higher power, to just listen to the educational professionals, listen to the, science. Are you a scientist? Then don't listen to them. Blah, 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 blah. So what do? We give weight to those beliefs, and then we form that identity, which further disconnects us from our soul's calling. It further takes us away from that higher power, that voice that we know is there, that true self, that pure, authentic expression that's buried deep beneath this mask that we create. And then now we find ourselves working this unfulfilling job that we hate. And at this point, we're walking around with all these different versions of ourselves that don't agree. And on the outside, we have this mask on that pretends to be someone that we're not, even though we know that that's not us. But we're just doing it for money, or we're just doing it for status, or we're just doing it out of the mental body, out of the ego that's been conditioned backwards. And then we have our wounded true self that's down there in the core, and it's crying out to be seen, to be heard and integrated. And this manifests as constant problems in our field. We feel dissonance, because we're not aligned with the three bodies in coherence, which allows source code to flow through us in the form of creative expression. So we always feel like everything is going wrong because we're not tapped into that higher source, that the world is against us and life is extremely hard, that you have to work, and still not make it. And we keep feeding the loop every day. And from this state, our vibration is diminished. Everything becomes difficult, slow, and there's so much resistance around everything because we're out of alignment with where our vortex is meant to be. Now we're just purely creating from the mental and the physical bodies alone, without any inspiration from source, which leads to unfulfillment in our life, in our mission. It leads to inauthenticity, which people can subtly feel because there's no source to purify the message, and we cannot access a flow of effortless cosmic creation because we're trying to create from force rather than flow. And remember, the essential key elements that create anything, life force in the form of flow, potential energy, that's the feminine, plus a container to hold it, to give it structure and order, the masculine. So that brings me to, how do you actually apply this? So how do we calibrate this system, right? Well, the first step is awareness. You must become aware of all the different parts of yourself that are defining your reality. And this comes down to your core programming, that ego that's been running since you were born, that you keep feeding, the beliefs that were formed through your experience as a result of what you experienced. This awareness allows you to become conscious of the patterns that are keeping you stuck in the life that you don't want. So you start to notice all the little trigger points, all the moments that you're choosing that vibration. And that's the next step, which is the moment of choice. Because we all have choice to align with the version of yourself that you're trying to create. And this involves clearing the channel between you and the spiritual plane. The whole channel needs to be open for source to flow through. You're the equilibrium. Source is the code, the source code that's flowing around it. All vibration is oscillating around an equilibrium. That's how vibration is defined in science. So you are vibration, you are the equilibrium, the point of focus where the source code is flowing through you. Think of the Kundalini serpent. And this alone will bring you the insight needed to make changes, to see, oh, this is not aligned with my highest purpose. This is a reality that I don't want to exist in. Source will purify that message. It will become abundantly clear where you're meant to be. It will become abundantly clear what you have to do. And it just becomes easy, effortless. You're like, oh, okay, this is easy. So once you've observed the pattern, you now understand the wound and you start working on reprogramming your beliefs to align with your frequency, right? You activate that moment of choice. That moment right there, that's the actual jump. That's where it happens, where you cultivate enough awareness to see those moments where you revert. And in that moment, you look it in the face and you say, no, thank you. And you choose to stay in the vibration of the alignment long enough for a shift to actually occur in physical matter. And as you keep going around and around in your loop, you'll start to notice the points or thresholds that keep pulling you back. So you might have accessed that state, but then for some reason you just can't get it to stick. That's because you reached a threshold, and then you've never been past that threshold. So your ego's like, no, don't go over there, that's dangerous. It pulls you back into that limited state of being. There's a lot of different factors that go into this. Also, decoherence is one of them, where the systems around you influence your system. So if you're not conscious of where you're putting your energy, what you're consuming in terms of like what you're eating, what you're viewing, what you're hearing, those are all things that you're consuming. And through this practice, you'll eventually be able to feel when you're resonating in that old version. It's like a full like night and day switch, where you're like, oh, I'm an old version right now. I can feel that vibration is limited. My perspective is narrow. I'm no longer in that high vibe state that I felt whenever it was, you know. And when you're in that new version, when you're in that higher frequency and you're like, wow, why do I feel so good? Why do I feel so much energy? Why is everything flowing so smoothly, right? Have you ever been, you just have those days that like everything just like works out. Like you're just like, oh my God, why is the creation just like gifting me with all of this blessing right now? It's because you were in alignment with your soul's path. All of your three bodies were working together to push you forward through space-time and create your dreams. And then that's where you practice the ability to choose which vibration you stay in and when. And then finally, clearing the channel for the process of creation to unfold from within you. Let me know if this lands or where it lands for you in the comments, and which areas you'd like me to expand on in future videos. If you're still here and got value from this video, consider sticking around by subscribing and becoming a part of the newly forming family. My name is Nate. I'm so happy that you're here, and I hope that this brought you value. Have a great day.